Well, good morning and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles. Good morning and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles. Oh, good. One of the things we know in New Thought is that you always have the ability for a new start. And so our musicians today are the one and only Andrew Belling on piano, our music director. And we're so happy to have in the house with us Bryan Miller. And very happy to have each of you here on this last Sunday in the month of September in the year 2018. Welcome to our Sunday celebration service, whether you're here in person today, watching us live stream from the camera above, or Facebook Live from the camera here on the tripod that will be stationary today, so it won't be moving around getting the back of your heads. We hope that we get it all in. Hello, Facebook Live individuals. We want you to know that we're a metaphysical New Thought spiritual community, and we welcome all facets and aspects of life into our spiritual home, whether that be here in person, as I just said, via live stream, or watching live or later, or Facebook Live, and potentially even Instagram Live. The vision statement for our community is supporting individuals finding their personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening. What this means is that we honor each and every one of you on your journey of your awakening to the power of the divine that resides within each one of us. Today, you may possibly hear some non-traditional Christian terminology, such as spiritual mind treatment. Is anyone here new today? We have anyone? Well, welcome. So you may hear some terminology you've never heard before, such as spiritual mind treatment, which refers to the way that we pray, which is in a declarative, affirmative manner, believing that the power and the presence of the only thing that exists, we call that God, exists equally among all of us. As I said, we refer to this power as an impersonal, indwelling presence that exists equally among all of the universe. We primarily practice a philosophy of faith, the way of life here, that's known in its incarnation originally as, Ernie? From a book that was written by Dr. Ernest Holmes, known as The Science of Mind. So what we do here is we welcome and celebrate all races, all religions, all countries of origins, all sexual orientations, all genders, all ethnicities, all abilities. We stand with you. We stand as you. And as our beloved Dr. David Walker used to say each and every Sunday morning, we welcome one and welcome all. All right, I'm going to keep talking a little bit if we can get my mic balanced out. I don't know what's going on, but it's messing with my tinnitus. So, all right, oh dear. Oh dear is right. So come on in, Dan. Just so you know, that mic, the backup components to the mic had been unplugged and moved this week, so it's been reinstalled, so we're working on that right now. It's going to work out perfectly, isn't it? Yes. Good. Just a big echo coming down from up there. So we open our service every Sunday morning with a ritual called Calling in the Light. And that ritual is an opportunity for each of us to get anchored into that oneness that I was just speaking of. Throughout this ritual, we will hear some music from a call and response modality through our musician, as well as an affirmation affirming the qualities that exist within us. We'll light some candles, and then we will hear spiritual mind treatment from me. Our practitioner of the day leads this. Our practitioner today that led our guided meditation up in the room was the one and only Joanne Worley, and we welcome you and acknowledge you for that. Thank you. I will be guiding us through the actual ritual itself, and our illuminator today is one of our fantastic students and followers of our teaching, Nancy Rooney. So I welcome Nancy to the bema. So as I shared, welcome Nancy. So as I shared with you all a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to start using the qualities of the divine and break them, use one of those qualities each week in lighting a candle. And just to remind you, those are in our philosophy known as peace, power, beauty, joy, light, life, love, and wisdom. So let's begin.
Calling in the light, calling in the light, calling in the light, calling in the light of love.
The ritual that we perform this morning, called Calling in the Light. And we perform this ritual today to promote the universal consciousness of life, which acknowledges that all peoples and all faiths, all sentient beings come from the one great universal presence, which we call Spirit. The purpose of this ritual is to draw into our gathering this morning a conscious awareness of our oneness and the qualities that we each possess as complete expressions of the divine. As we feel the vibrations shift during this experience, this ritual, may we become ever more aware of the light of life that exists in and as all of life, including you and including me. Today, we will use each of the letters of the word peace, the quality of the divine known as peace, during this ritual to create an opportunity for each of us to embrace our light in a more expansive way. Nancy lights the first candle for the letter P, which stands for purposeful, which is defined as having our showing a determination or resolution or resolve. May we each live our spiritual awakening with resolve as we play a role in the co-creation of our lives through our mental and emotional actions. The second candle is lit for the letter E, which stands for energy. In the book, The Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes defines energy as a divine and unfailing attribute, and consequently, there is never any lack of it. So today, may we each commit to using our energy in productive and life-enhancing ways. Moving to the third candle, Nancy illuminates the candle for the word activation, standing for the letter A, which is defined as the action or process of making something active or operative. Today, may we each consciously make active our thoughts, actions, reactions, and interactions in and as life, reflecting the innate peace within all beings. Moving to the fourth letter, C. We light the fourth candle for the letter C, which stands for conscious. Synonyms for the word conscious are awake, aware, alert, responsive, and sentient. In this moment, may we each tune into our ability to be aware and commit to living our life awake and alert to our ability to impact the world and consciously invoke peace which each thought and action. As we move to the final letter of the word peace, E, Nancy lights the candle for evolution. Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of the teaching The Science of Mind, defines evolution as the passing of spirit into form. Traditionally, evolution is defined as a process of gradual, peaceful, progressive change or development. Today, I affirm for all of us that as a result of our finding personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening, progressive changes and development is manifesting in and as all spirit as it becomes form. Peace. P-E-A-C-E. Purposeful energy activates conscious evolution. As we move to the sixth candle, the healing candle, I invite you to take a moment and feel the peace within each and every individual. And then silently put that energy into the light of the healing flame so that each and every individual may experience the eternal and everlasting love of the divine.
I am love.
I am love.
I am peace. in my heart, I am free. I am spirit. I am soul. All together, we are whole. Calling in the light, calling in the light, calling in the light of love, calling in the light, calling in the light, calling in the light of love. And so it is, and so it is, and so it is.
Just feeling this energy of transformation, the vibrational shift, the resonance field of peace. I know for each and every one of us here in this very moment, whether we're in the room or streaming live or through Facebook Live, we're aware of the interconnectedness of the only thing that is. It's energy. And as awakened, alert, sentient beings, I know for each one of us that we affirm today that we use this energy in a purposeful way, ultimately activating conscious evolution for ourselves. And in so doing, it results in us being engaged in the activity of co-creation. And so during this time that we have together in community, what I know for us that we allow to unfold individually and collectively is a greater receptivity to the allness of life itself. And as that unfolds today, it is then presented to us as a new idea, new information, beautiful music, love and light and peace and power and beauty and joy and wisdom in a new way. And I know that we trust that we're here by divine appointment, meaning that there's a higher idea always unfolding for us today. And so we're here to hear exactly what's being said, letting our ego disappear and dissipate back out into the creative ethers of the universe. And we simply just say, I am here and I am ready, bring it on. Letting the power of the divine do its thing through us. We say thank you and let it be by saying together amen. And so it is. So it is. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Very much so. Thank you, Andrew. And so it's time for more music. And take the batch. Take the batch. We're going to say that we've heard that this week, and aren't we happy that it unfolds in this way beautifully? Take the bench. So it's been a journey since the last time Brian was here for you in your life, and I'm going to say on behalf of CSL LA, we're so happy to see you here, feel you here, honor you here, and know that you're living your life authentically and perfectly and healthy. And so without further ado, I have presented to you on the beam of Brian.
With certainly a new appreciation of life. Folks are blessed to make the best of every day, living by their own philosophy. Everyone beneath the sun must find a way. I have found the only way for me. I don't believe in friend and even why mess around with strife. I never was cut out to step and stride. Give me the simple life. Some find it better time. present, those things fall my mind. Just serve me tomatoes and mashed potatoes. Give me the simple life. A cotton small is all I'm after, not one that's spacious and wide. A house that rings with joy and laughter, with the ones you love inside. Some like a high road, I like a low road, free from all care and strife. Sounds corny and seedy, but yes indeed, give me the simple life. I greet the dawn when I awaken, the sky is clear up above. I like my scrambled eggs and bacon, served by someone I love. Some like the high road, I like the low road, free from all care and strife. Sounds corny and seedy, but yes indeed, give me the simple life.
Yes. Bryan Miller and Andrew Belling. Bryan Miller and Andrew Belling. Thank you. How's everyone's week been? I'm just going to sum it up in 2 words. Oy vey. So, of course, I feel it would be irresponsible of me to stand before you today and not address what we have dealt with this week politically in our country on some level. And so I'm going to be rather note-bound today and just know that I have a very specific message to share with you today with my intention to stimulate within you the progression of what we've been talking about all month of change your vibration, change your life, to hopefully stimulate within you, as it's done for me in preparing for this message, to rise to a higher vibrational frequency and looking at what has unfolded in the political system of our country as a result of this week, while using that which I know to be true spiritually and doing everything I can to do and to honor our former First Lady as she stood before a microphone and said, when they go low, we go high. And so I'm going to begin by reading this morning to you a writing that was published by one of my dear beloved spiritual brothers, Dr. Jim Lockhart. You all know him, and he's been here, and he is a brilliant man, and he has the capacity to address ideas that are difficult oftentimes to look at from a spiritual perspective and yet practical. In his recent blog, which is titled Find Your Voice, he wrote this week, and it's titled Being a Spiritual Citizen. Every time in human history has its share of challenges. Our time is no different in that respect. However, the challenges that we face are large and complex. Simplistic answers, while tempting, are inadequate. We cannot build a wall to solve our problems. We cannot ignore climate change as a matter of public policy any longer. We cannot sustain humanity through politics of fear, division, and separation. We are called to engagement, and the call comes both from within and without. In the terms of spiritual intelligence, we often fail to distinguish between inner images from ego versus those from our higher self. Now, spiritual intelligence is defined as the balance and the incorporation of our mental intelligence, our emotional intelligence, and our physical intelligence, ultimately rising up and being known as our spiritual intelligence. Ego tells us to play it safe, to withdraw, or to attack an enemy or a perceived enemy. Anyone had that feeling this week? Anyone acted on it? And if so, forgive yourself in this moment. And I say that with all sincerity, as I did with myself yesterday. Higher self tells us to bring our best selves into engagement with whatever challenges are present because it is ours to do. In our new thought spiritual communities, that's what we are here, we are only just coming to terms with social justice and engagement on a large scale. We are awakening to the expanded reality of faith with works. Thoughts and prayers alone may feel good, but they are no substitute for a combination of faithful spiritual practices and acts in harmony with those practices. We must also realize that when we apply spiritual principles to issues, we are often going to appear to be for one side or another in identity politics. The courage and skill to be a presence in support of our principles is critical. Our principles, first and foremost, is that there is only one activity ever taking place. I'm editing this. That we are all one in and as the divine, always. Dr. Holmes addresses the faith without works concept in this ideology, in this quote right here. Faith without works, in other words, without action, without engagement, is dead. I'm going to say that again. Faith without works is dead, Ernest wrote. In the early 1900s, by the way. We should not only pray, we should act, each contributing the best he or she has to the common purpose, each willing to make any sacrifice necessary. One, in a certain sense, a selfish one, for we all desire self-preservation, but the other in the greater sense that there can be no individual self-preservation without the preservation of all. Charles Fillmore, also an early metaphysician, which had this published in the latter part of the 19th century or the early part of the 20th century, says this: so many people pray and pray and pray. They don't get action. Our bodies need to be acted upon. It's not altogether praying, but it is doing. You must do something. Now, I know that that contradicts what I've stood here before you before and said. It's not important to just do, but to also be. What we're being called forth to do and to be are the same things. Conscious, awakened, active, spiritually engaged evolutionists. Dr. Jim goes on to write that these statements from the founders of two prominent New Thought denominations, Centers for Spiritual Living, or at the time known as Religious Science or the Study of the Science of Mind, and Unity, show that the relationship between the spiritual living and the spiritual practices and acts is nothing new. It has just taken us nearly a century to grasp its significance for all of humanity. But we must enter the realm of citizenship with a deep connection to our higher selves. The world of politics is rough and tumble. We witnessed that this week, often seeming the antithesis of a spiritual life. But that is exactly why the need is so great for spiritually mature engagement. Citizenship and politics are the way we do community in the larger world beyond the church walls. If we're not bringing the best of our spiritual awareness and practices into this arena, we are withholding our best from our fellow human beings. Citizenship is what we're being called to. Well, what does it mean to have citizenship? To be a citizen means you get the rights of where you live. It means you're born there or have the rights to live there. You get the vote. You get to vote. And basically a lot of freedom that non-citizens can't. Citizenship isn't by race, but by where you were born or if you apply for it. Citizenship are the rights of where you live. I invite you to take a moment and think of the rights that you have being a citizen here of the United States of America. The freedoms that you have and both the fragility and the beauty of those. Gene Houston, a modern-day spiritual practitioner, a modern-day philosopher, a modern-day religious scientist, writes this: In our time, we've come to the stage where the real work of humanity begins. It is the time where we partner creation in the creation of ourselves and the restoration of the biosphere, the regenesis of society, and the assuming of a new type of culture, the culture of kindness. Herein, we live daily life reconnected and recharged by the source, so as to become liberated and engaged in the world and in our task, that which we're being called to do. Dr. Jim goes on to write and closes with, "There is much for us to do, and we in New Thought have so much to offer. Let us step out of our comfort zones and call forth our inner powers of love, compassion, strength, and wisdom." He's not saying let's just show up with love and compassion, or let's not just show up with strength or wisdom. He's saying let's step out of our comfort zones and call forth and put into action, I might say, our inner powers of love. Love, as we know, and the teaching is the self-givingness of spirit whose desire is to create more of itself out of itself. Compassion, living with passion. I've learned in many years this teaching that the word passion broken down is passing I on. It's passing the I of the divine on to all of humanity consciously and with love, honoring the self-givingness of spirit whose desire is to create more of itself out of itself. And so making sure that that is ensured for all of humanity, because we have that right. We should ensure that for others. Strength. Well, we all know what that means. But strength in this teaching is to know that we know that we know that we know that there is only God. But to not live with that just within the confines of our own mind. To march the streets, to vote in according with that, to speak our truth, and to not attempt to convert anyone to that. But to speak it with such conviction that on some field, the resonance field of that must resonate with them, but be completely unattached as to how they respond to that. And wisdom. Wisdom is that quality of the divine within us that should we just shut up and allow it to rise up, it will guide our tongue to speak that which is being called forth to be spoken. Dr. Jim goes on to say, let us engage from these qualities, trying to convert no one, only to bring love into the process at every level and in every way possible. Now is our time. Now, we've heard before spiritual philosophies or religions say, now is our time. And just as I say that, a shiver runs up my spine. Why? Because those philosophies believe that now is our time, because what they believe is that now is our time to convert you. But that's not what we believe. We believe that now is our time to honor that Spirit has placed the stamp of individuality upon itself and called it you. And that it's my role in life as I change my vibration of my life and changing life to know who I am as a spiritual being, to do everything within my power to ensure and support that you, the interconnected expression of the divine of me, has a full, complete, honorable, respected life and a venue in which to express that with authenticity. All month we've talked about changing your vibration, changing your life. But let's look at that collectively as change our vibrations, changing our life. Not just as a community, but let's look at changing our vibrations, changing our lives as humanity. Let's look at changing our vibrations as changing our lives as a country. A democratic country. Now, I know, as I've said before, I'm sure this week in politics has challenged one and your vibrational frequency. Yes? Yes. And it should. If you walked away from what we saw this week playing out in the theatrical stage of politics and you were not affected by that, slap yourself on the face. And I say that tongue in cheek. But what it should stir up within you is that There are activities that are taking place in our world today that is not respecting all of humanity. And that we in our country have the ability and the opportunity that if we don't like what we are seeing, to do something about it. And that is to show up in the polls and vote at a minimum. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept of voting, very surface. And if you're a voter and you're a registered voter, please act accordingly. And if you're not, we have voter registration cards for you in the back. Please do so. If you know individuals that don't have those, please take them to them. We have congregants in our congregation who are having a party soon that's out supporting political individuals. It's Elizabeth and Terry. Feel free to talk to them about that if you want. We're looking to do something here. The congregation Colami does something. What I'm speaking of today is we are being called forth today to make sure that every individual that we know that knows that they have the ability to vote and that they do so, that we support that with it. We reach out to the millennials and to all individuals and remind them of their opportunity to vote. Not tell them how to vote, but to remind them to vote. This week, I reached out to many young people that I knew and said, I just want to remind you that I know you've moved. Do you know how you're going to vote? Are you doing it by an absentee ballot? Are you doing it from home? And many of them are like, oh my God, thank you for that. I hadn't thought about it. If we are to be mentors and leaders to those in our lives and to give of what we have with love and compassion and strength and wisdom, those are acts that are being called upon us, as Dr. Jim's saying, to be engaged into the political arena. Change your vibrations, change your life. Well, what are your vibrations? We've learned all month long, as Cassandra Sturdy says, that your vibration is a fancy way of describing your overall state of being. That every single thing in the universe is made up of energy vibrating at different frequencies. We saw this week things manifesting and expressing itself at a frequency that more than likely I'll speak for myself, I did not identify with. And yet, it's the same vibrational frequency that exists within the beliefs that I have and the life that I have, meaning that we're all interconnected and there's only one activity that's taking place, really one vibration that's taking place, yet there are many different frequencies that are being exhibited and expressed, just as that's the case with a radio or a cell phone or whatever else frequencies use. From a scientific and metaphysical perspective, Sturdy further explains that we are a being that is made up of energy levels: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Each of these levels has a vibrational frequency which combine to create your overall vibration of being. Where did we hear physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual a moment ago? We heard it in regards to the intelligence that we have within. Being called to use our spiritual intelligence, which is the totality of our emotional and mental and physical intelligence that exists within us, as we step forward to invoke and participate in the change that we desire to see in our country, ultimately impacting how we're being viewed around the world. Now, we've all heard statements such as, man, he has a really negative vibe, or that place has amazing energy, or she is whacked and that song makes me feel loved. Yet few of us are really stopped to fathom the depths of these common expressions and remarks. The truth is that instinctively, on both a primal and intuitive level, we can sense that not only is everything composed of energy, but that this energy varies in its quantity and quality drastically in our everyday lives. It's important and helpful for us to remember and be aware that like energy attracts energy. This is the law of attraction in action. Albert Einstein told us, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1921 in physics, everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality that you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy, it's physics. So what does that mean to us as we're being called to be highly engaged, spiritual, awakened citizens, as Dr. Jim calls it, being a spiritual citizen today? Well, it's important for us to remember, as Zig Ziglar tells us, that life is an echo. What you send out comes back. Also, what you don't send out comes back. What you sow, you reap, action or inaction. What you give, you get. or what you don't give, you get. What you see in others exists in you. Think about that watching the screen Thursday and Friday. What you see in others exists in you. Remember, life is an echo. It always gets back to you. So, give goodness. In other words, give your divinity is what he's telling us. Now, it's arrogant of us to think that this is true of everyone else but us when we're seeing something that we don't like. But it's important as an awakened spiritual citizen, as an awakened spiritual being, as an awakened conscious metaphysician to not only own the spiritual truth for ourselves, but getting our ego out of the way and realize that it is important. In fact, it's critical. In fact, it's incumbent upon us if we choose to be a conscious evolutionist to know that that's true for every single one. That everything in the universe is made up of energy vibrating at different frequencies, and we all vibrate energetically at a particular frequency. And know that the higher the frequency of your energy or vibration, the lighter that you feel in your physical, emotional, and mental bodies. That you experience greater personal power, clarity, peace, love, and joy when you vibrate at a higher frequency. Well, why does this matter? Because as I said in the beginning of this message, it's important upon us as awakened metaphysicians that know that the way that we think, the way that we act, the way that we engage, the way that we give, the things that we sow come back to us. Therefore, it is important to follow the former First Lady's instructions to us that as they go low, we go high. Meaning choosing to become a conscious evolutionist in the process of what is unfolding before us, which is actually unfolding as us. Changing your vibration as you change life itself. What does it mean to be a conscious evolutionist? Well, here's what it means. Conscious evolution refers to the ability of the human species to choose what the species, Homo sapiens, becomes in the future. Based on recent advancements in science, medicine, technology, psychology, sociology, and spirituality. I want you to hear that again based on what you viewed this week in the political arena of our country. And ask yourselves, what do you want our future to look like, to be like, to be? Conscious evolution refers to the ability of the human species, you and I, to choose what the species becomes in the future. Based on recent advancements in science, medicine, technology, psychology, sociology, and spirituality. Is it an easy task before us? Maybe, maybe not. It could be like pushing a large boulder up a hill. But we have the key. That we know, as the Buddha tells us, what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. So today is the day that we have the opportunity to ask ourselves, am I willing to be in control of that which I think? For me, for my opponents, for those that disagree with me, for my country. Am I willing to be in control of what I feel in regards to myself, to my fellow citizens, to those who believe spiritually different than I do? Am I willing to attract difference in a respectful way into my world? And what am I willing to imagine is possible in my life? By simply asking those questions and living from that perspective, you have the capacity and the ability to consciously engage yourself and to live from your awakened self. Our theme for the month of October, living from your awakened self. But yet what is required of us is practical daily application. And so today I want us to look at that from a perspective beyond simply just changing our thinking, from simply just using spiritual mind treatments, but to step into the world as an awakened alchemist. Alchemy is defined as the process of taking something ordinary, our everyday lives, and turning it into something extraordinary, sometimes in a way that cannot be explained. An example of using alchemy is a person who takes a pile of scrap metal and turns it into a beautiful art. I invite you to take your emotions, your experiences of what has transpired this week and any other week and anything else in your life that you may see as scrap metal or any other word that starts with S, and choose to turn it into spiritual art. Choose today to be a change agent, to be a modern day awakened spiritual alchemist. Alchem me means change your frequency, choose your experience. To be an alchemist, to study, to practice alchem me, is to be an individual that chooses your frequency, choosing your experience. Remember, Wayne Dyer told us that you will see it in life when you believe it in life. Meaning that you and I can play a more vital role in the evolution of a higher idea in our democracy becoming true. It is possible. It's not too late. However, we have to step up. We have to show up. We have to act up. And we have to vote. And we have to do everything in our power to support those who are awakened and aware that know that that's their responsibility as well. We can no longer sit back and hope that they vote. We can no longer sit back and say, I've done my part. I'm 65 years old and I've done my part. I've walked this before. It's important for us to look at what is in front of us to show the children of our country what's possible for them. Today is the day to embrace the divisions that take place. Embrace the divisions take place and take it to a higher idea. To become an active spiritual alchemist. So I'm going to share with you what the steps are of becoming a spiritual activist. There are 7 stages to it. Solve et coagula. Dissolve and coagulate is an alchemist saying. The Latin expression, solve et coagula, is derived from solve, meaning to break down and separate, while coagula describes the process of bringing elements back together, coagulating into a new, higher form. They go low, we go. They go low, we go. Interestingly, solve et coagula is a wonderful psychological metaphor. By pursuing gold or listening to our intuitive higher calling, we break down limiting parts within us that are in the way of our transformation, a philosopher's stone, if you will, into a free and whole being coagulation. While there are no universal stages of alchemy due to the sheer number of different schools of belief of alchemy out there, these are some of the most widely accepted stages. 1. Calcination. Calcination is the process of heating and decomposing raw matter, or in other words, breaking down parts of ourselves that are in the way of our own happiness, our own evolution, if you will. Often we'd rather be right or fulfill an idea of perfection than be truly happy. So we continue neglecting the exploration of ourselves. In other words, living as an awkward being and one that's unfulfilled. The stage of calcination represents the stage in our lives where we begin breaking down our egos, our self-doubt, our stubbornness, our self-sabotaging behaviors, our pride, our arrogance, and put aside so that we can find out what is underneath through the process of calcination. The second is dissolution. Once we've broken down all of our personality characteristics, the way that were in the way, we are left with the process of dissolution, which is the beginning of feeling less identification with our false sense of self. And once we are free from our pride or our self-doubt, we can take one step back and truly observe our positive or negative qualities. Suddenly, our inability to take responsibility for our many faults, avoidance, or traumatizing memories and other inner tensions rise to the surface, causing us to become aware of how our behavior might be affecting others. This is the beginning of spiritual maturity. Sometimes the stage of transformation is brought about accidentally by illnesses and misfortunes in our lives that cause us to really pay attention to what we're doing, shocking us out of our avoidance patterns, such as workaholism, drugs, and TV watching. The third step in the 7 steps is separation. Separation is the stage where we make our thoughts and emotions more defined by isolating them from other thoughts and emotions. A simple example is our attempt to free our heart from resentment while trying to forgive someone. The process of separation involves truly becoming aware of our authentic feelings for a person or for ourselves. In this stage, we honestly experience our anger, our frustration, or our disappointment towards another or ourselves, rather than reverting back to the old habit of dutifully trying to forgive or forget because it's the right or comfortable thing to do. Now remember, we're talking about alchemy, about turning the S word into something as beautiful art. Separation is closely entwined with shadow work, in that we must allow our feelings and thought within us to surface side by side. This helps us to isolate particular elements of our character in order to honestly see and assess them, moving us to the 4th step in the stage here of an alchemy: conjunction. After the purification and clarification of the first 3 stages, we must properly combine the remaining elements within us through the process of conjunction. Well, in the previous step, we separated and learned to distinguish all the separate feelings and thoughts within us. Conjunction provides the inner space, the simmering that is required in alchemy, that is required for us to truly and honestly accept all the parts of our authentic self. When we experience this stage of spiritual alchemy, all of our unconscious thoughts and feelings bubble up to the surface and into the light of conscious awareness, which then moves us to the 5th stage, which is fermentation. Fermentation is the beginning of our process of rebirth. The stage can be compared to the death of a grape, which then becomes the birth of wine. While the first 4 stages involved working with the aspects of our old personality, in the stage of fermentation, we begin to experience moments of our more refined self. Fermentation occurs in 2 parts: putrefaction and spiritization. Putrefaction is the decomposition of our former selves, the process of inner death by which the old elements of our conscious and unconscious minds are allowed to rot and decompose. Some call this stage the dark night of the soul, as it can be followed by troublesome mental states such as depression. On the other hand, spiritization is the stage by which we begin to look at the world in a new light. With the right guidance and with enough inner work, spiritization involves letting go of all the aspects of ourselves and our lives that don't serve or contribute to our involution. This is when we taste moments of great inner peace and stillness, moving us to the 6th stage of distillation. Once we begin our spiritization, we must find a way to continue to integrate all of these spiritual realizations into our lives in order to allow them to become permanent. Distillation is the level of further purification. One example of distillation is finding ways to live from a daily place of inner peace, even in the most mundane circumstances, even in the circumstances where we are most troubled. With enough repeated practice of constantly dying and being reborn in the present moment, by being reborn in the present moment without entering again into the habits, identifications, and cycles of the mind, we experience a strong and profound inner transformation. In the East, this is mostly defined as enlightenment. Moving us to the 7th step: coagulation. Similar to the blood's ability to form clots and stop bleeding, coagulation is the moment we've broken open the head, or in other words, we've become free from the mind and have allowed our consciousness or soul to connect with the materia prima, the spirit. What we're being told here is, as we're being called to a higher idea than ever before, as we're being called to letting go of all the attachment to the past, is that it's a process. It's a process of opening our being, our mind, and our heart to saying yes, to stepping up, to acting up, to stepping forward and taking control of how we want our future to look as conscious evolutionists. Action is required. Death is required. Letting go is required. Fermentation is required. Distillation is required. But ultimately, coagulation unfolds and materializes as a connection to that place that is beyond where the mind is. And yet, we know we have the mind. And we get to then use it in a way that is not only socially responsible, not only politically responsible, not only humanely responsible, but we get the benefits of that, of living a better life, more at peace, with greater power, calling in and expressing the light that exists within us, by giving of love, feeling and experiencing and expressing beauty because we know that we've done our part, and knowing that deep within us there is wisdom to guide us every single step of the way. That then positions us to be poised to live from our awakened self. Please consciously do your part. Thank you.